Good evening, everybody. I'm Mayor Pro Tem John Capocha from the city of Sierra Madre, and I'm just here to kick things off. We're going to talk a little bit about the golden age of Sierra Madre, and this is just a special city, a special time, and that's the theme of the night, and Mayor Harabedian is going to tell you a little bit more about that. But I just, first of all, just welcome everybody for taking the time out from your busy schedules. Let me just introduce a few people that are here tonight. First of all, I'd like to introduce Mr. Garrett Newsom. He's the principal of the school. Where is he? Oh, there he is, okay. Sierra Madre schools are really a big part of Sierra Madre. Mr. Larry Torres, he's our president of the Board of Education for Pasadena School District. Mrs. Joanne Harabedian, who is not only the mayor's mother, but she's the principal of St. Rita School. Okay, we've got a lot of Sierra Madre staff members here tonight, and I just want to acknowledge them by reading out their names. Okay, Mr. Gabe England, who's our city manager. Chris Semino, our Public Works Director. Vincent Gonzalez, our Planning and Community Preservation Director. Christine Smart, our librarian. Where is she? Mr. James Carlson. Is James here? Yeah. All right, let's give him a big hand. James wears a lot of hats, so I don't know what to call him now other than a great, valuable employee and longtime resident of Sierra Madre. Christian Delgado, where's Christian? He's here. He's on our IT staff, as is Oscar Milan. He's also keeping our systems safe. Laura Aguilar, who's a big part of just putting all this together tonight. Thank you. Tevin Vong, is he here tonight? Tevin? There he is. Oh, yes, okay. Miguel Hernandez, who takes care of our HR department for Sierra Madre. And Jen Peterson, is she here? Hi, Jen. Is there any other staff members that I missed tonight? Oh, that's Colby, our finance director. Okay, also we have Council Member Jean Goss. And Rochelle Arizmendi is not here yet, is she? I think she's going to be here in a few minutes. And our city clerk, Sue Spears. And I understand we've got a representative from Judy Chu's office, Congresswoman Judy Chu. Is she here? May Lee? Maybe not, okay. Okay, so with that, I want to thank the Sierra Madre Middle School Marching Band, who's going to be performing for us. And the marching band is led by Mr. Chad Prado. And they're going to do the Star Spangled Banner for us. Are you ready? You guys all ready? Okay, take it. Thank you very much, marching band. That was excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we're going for the presentation of the colors and the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to have Sierra Madre Cub Scout Pack 110 to do that for us, and that's led by Mr. James Carlson here. So go ahead and take it away.
Will the audience please rise?
Okay, let's give our PAC 110 a big round of applause. Okay, and now I'm going to introduce the St. Rita Youth Choir to perform a patriotic medley under Mr. Oganeski as the choir director here.
While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer.
Well, well, that was worth the price of admission right there, huh? Really outstanding, young St. Rita's Choir. Thank you very much for helping us with our State of the City address and presenting us with this wonderful performance. Thank you. Okay, again, I'm going to soon introduce Mayor John Harabedian, who's going to present information that will show you how far we've come as a city. This is now the golden age of Sierra Madre, and we're all very fortunate to be a part of this. Sierra Madre is the crown jewel of Southern California. It's the best place to live, and our city government's finances are sound, and the future is bright, and Mayor Harabedian will tell you why. But first, let me tell you a little bit about our mayor, who has served on our city council since 2012. Mayor Harabedian was born and raised here in Sierra Madre and went to local schools here in Sierra Madre Elementary and St. Rita Elementary. He subsequently graduated from the prestigious Loyola High School in Los Angeles, then matriculated to Yale University, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and where he was a member of the student government. From there, Mayor Harabedian went on to graduate school at Oxford, where he graduated with a Master of Science in Comparative Social Policy. After graduation, he served as a Coro Fellow in Los Angeles, which is a program that provides leadership training to prepare early career professionals for effective and ethical leadership. He then worked as a policy analyst in LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa's office before attending Stanford Law School. During law school, John served as a certified student attorney and led the Equality Pro Bono Project. And then upon graduating from Stanford, John clerked for Federal District Court Judge Josephine Stanton before joining the Los Angeles Law Office of Latham and Watkins. He also served as a prosecutor in the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. Mayor Harabedian is currently an associate investment manager and legal counsel for Bentham IMF, a litigation finance company. He served as mayor of Sierra Madre in 2014 to 2015 and once again was selected by his fellow council members to serve as mayor in 2019. And I'm sure you've all heard, Mayor Harabedian is currently running for LA County Board of Supervisors seat for the 5th District. Now, certainly you'll all agree that the mayor's credentials are impressive, but as it's been said, the proof is in the pudding. This evening, Mayor Harabedian is going to show you why leadership matters. After 8 years on the City Council and 2 stints as mayor, Sierra Madre's financial situation has never been better. I think I can speak for my colleagues when I say that we believe that Mayor Harabedian certainly deserves a lot of credit for Sierra Madre's success. With that, please join me in giving my friend, our current mayor and future Los Angeles County Supervisor, a rousing welcome.
Very, very nice. Thank you. I mean, the introduction, John is a very generous man, as you all just heard, and I'll just say that that's so touching coming from you and the leader that you are. And many people know that John was gracious enough to allow me to be mayor for this first 9 months, because John was really up to be mayor for this first 9 months. We have this situation where John and I are serving out the end of our terms together, and there's this 18-month period, and Mayor Pro Tem was gracious and allowed me to go first. So John, thank you so much for everything that you do. So thank you. And I'm going to embarrass his wife, Marty Capocha, because as a spouse of a council member, the spouses don't get much recognition, and they should. And so Marty, if you're here, please stand up, and we're going to give you a round of applause for everything that you do. There she is. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and the spouses and the partners are there with us the whole 9 yards. Lisa is in here, else I would give her a big shout out too. And now I'm going to take a mayoral privilege and embarrass my wife and kids. So my wife Youngji, 2 sons John and Joshua, I want to give them just a quick shout out and have them stand up so that we can all give them a round of applause. Everything that we do as a council, the families are doing it right with us. And I think it's always good to acknowledge that, because we are volunteers here on the city council. And that doesn't mean that it isn't difficult and time consuming, but our families are the only reason why we get to do this, really. And as you've noticed, it gets a little bit more intimate after the kids sing, and then the parents go home with the kids. But I do want to thank St. Rita's, where I went to school, for providing that wonderful medley, the marching band from Sierra Madre Middle School, and the color guard, the scouts. Thank you guys for everything. You know, we are now a 113-year-old city, and I think we're finally hitting our stride. I think we've finally grown up, and we finally got to the point where I think we are in the golden age of where we, should have been for a long time, and are really proud of where we've been, but we're even prouder as to where we are now. And the state of the city, just a brief amount of history, wasn't something that we did up until, I think, 2010. And I think my first state of the city, I had an iPad, I talked for a few minutes, and everyone had cake. And then the next year, John got up, and he did this elaborate PowerPoint, he blew everyone away, so I knew I had to step up my game this time. But John and I are going to be splitting this. I'm going to go first and just tell you a pretty simple story. It's a story of a city that has really done in the last 3 years remarkable things. We've increased services, we've shored up our infrastructure, we've invested millions of dollars into the city. And we've done that at the same time as cutting expenditures and growing our surplus. It's actually unheard of what we've done, and you'll see more of the detail. But we've really done it with the help of a tremendous staff, a team of council members, Councilmember Goss, Councilmember Arizmendi, Mayor Pro Tem, Denise Delmar, who's no longer here. But we've done it with a team effort, and we couldn't be prouder for the work that we've done. And so really the agenda today is simple. We're going to talk about finances, a lot of finances, which can be boring, but I think this is an important story to tell. It's an important story to tell because we are your fiduciaries. You elected us. You deserve to know what's going on in the city and how we are managing your finances. But I think it's important for those that actually don't live in Sierra Madre, and there's some people here, just to know how I think city government and good government, no matter whether it's a city, a county, or state, can be run. And then we're going to talk about some of the services that we provide. Public safety, the library, and the Mayor Pro Tem is going to go more in depth about public works. And he's also going to talk about some of the environmental stewardship that we have done with the Clean Power Alliance. So let's get right into it. The state of the city is really, I think, about fiscal health. Whenever you talk about the state of a union, state of the state, state of the city, someone always gets in front of the mic and says the state of whatever it is strong. And usually they're lying. I mean, usually they're not telling the truth. Usually it's, the city or the agency is underwater. They can't play they're behind on their CalPERS pension obligations. They have an imperfect balanced budget. But in this case, the state of the city is really strong. I mean, we have a government that has really done an exceptional job of managing its finances. And you look at 3 different ways of actually calculating that. So you look at the past, if you will, the CAFR, the Comprehensive Financial Report, which really looks at the past year as to how the city operated. You look at the present, which is our budget, and then you look at future costs and liabilities. And what we're going to actually focus specifically on is our pension liability and what we've done there. So there's a state senator in California named John Morlock. He represents a northern part of the state. And this is a guy that you would love to have at a cocktail party. He's a lot of fun. What he does for his spare time is actually look at CAFRs for local cities throughout California. I mean, this guy's a load of fun. That was a joke. It wasn't a good joke, I guess. But he's a CPA. He really loves numbers. And what he does is issue a report every year that basically ranks cities based on financial health. And the actual criteria that he's come up with is just net position. And what that means is, what do your cash flow and revenue look like versus the actual debt that you have as a city? And I think it's actually a pretty ingenious way of looking at it. You know, putting all aside, you know, what you can hide in a budget, what you can hide in an audit, really, what he does is just look at revenues, total liabilities, and then divides it by a per capita basis. And as you can see, the story for Sierra Madre has been pretty good. I remember Gabe walked in to the office one day and said, "Hey guys, we got great news. We're number 97 on the Morlock report." And I think all of us said, "I have no idea what you're talking about. We don't know what the Morlock report is." 97, that sounds pretty bad. You know, we like to be number 1, we like to be number 2, we're pretty competitive. But he explained it, you know, in detail later, just how great it was. We're in the top 5th of cities in terms of financial health throughout the state. We, as you can see, in the past 3 years, we went from, you know, 180 to 97. And I think that we did that in large part because of staff. But we did it in a lot of important ways that I'll talk about later, which was managing our pension liability, refinancing our bonds with our water debt, and just doing some pretty smart things where we were paying less in interest and less in debt and allowing our revenue to kind of speak for itself. So this is something that, you know, is good for us, but how does it relate to other cities? Well, it becomes even better when you look at the cities around us and our peer cities. Up is good, down is bad. And as you can see, our neighbors aren't doing necessarily as good as we are. And it's not to rub this in their faces or goat, but I do think that this is a really good example just to give you guys a quick overview of just how well we are doing relative to other cities. It is a round of applause. I think so. So now we'll go to basically the overview of our CAFR. And again, a CAFR is a comprehensive financial report every year that we put together that shows exactly how we performed. And there's one or two things that I want to highlight. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But one of them is that our general fund reserves are at nearly 70% of our expenditures. It's at almost $7 million. To put that in perspective, we could almost run an entire year, 70% of a year, with the reserves that we have. Now, we have a policy not to drop below 25% of our general fund expenditures with our reserves. And more realistically, we look to have a 50% general fund reserve. But to have 70% is really extraordinary. I mean, you don't really see that very often. And as I said before, we are doing that. And at the same time, we are building a full-time fire department. We are spending millions of dollars on our infrastructure. We are actually adding services to the city. And so it'd be really easy to build up reserves if you were just slashing and burning and actually cutting all your services. But as you've seen, as residents, we've actually done the exact opposite. At the same time, looking outside of the general fund, you look at our proprietary funds, the sewer fund, the water fund, and we're actually doing really great in those funds as well. Now, that's thanks to you guys, the ratepayers. We passed 2 rate increases, one in 2014 and one in 2018. And without those rate increases, really, we wouldn't be able to do what we've done. But that being said, we have managed your money very, very well. So the sewer fund, our position has grown by $240,000, our surplus there. Our water fund, the surplus has actually dipped a little bit, but here's the good news. We've spent nearly $7.6 million on infrastructure. I think that number is so incredible considering that the year before 2017, we spent $300,000. We spent $300,000 in our water mains and replacing our pipes, and then quickly, within the next 3 to 4 years, spent $7.6 million. That is an incredible step forward. It really shows you what you can do when you really dig into this, and frankly, bring in managers and staff that really have a really good idea and a grasp on how you manage these things. So from a CAFR standpoint, Sierra Madre is doing extremely well. And our Mayor Pro Tem is going to talk a little bit more about what we've done in water. But this is kind of the first, beyond the Morlock report, our CAFR is really strong. Then we go to the budget. So the budget is even, I think more impressive. And I think it's more impressive because of what I said before. We have literally, spending has gone down from a percentage-wise beyond just the general fund across all funds in a pretty sizable amount. Close to $800,000 we've been able to cut from the budget. And as you see, that is impressive because when you're talking about the actual reduction of spending from 17 to 18, not just the last year, it's actually $3.3 million less than we were spending 2 years ago. So if you look at all the funds put together, we've actually cut $3.3 million from the government. And again, I'm going to sound like I'm going to be beating a dead horse, broken record. That's when we are expanding services at the same time. And we did that in a lot of different ways. One of them was actually just eliminating a level of government. We literally took a level of government that was budgeted and we eliminated it. And what we saw was there were positions that were budgeted that just weren't adding value. It wasn't efficient to have them. And so we eliminated it. And it wasn't actually laying people off. Everyone who wanted to work here kept their job. And we actually added positions in different departments during that time. But it's amazing what you can do when you actually go into it with eyes wide open and say, do we actually need those positions and are they working? And another thing that we do every year now, and we've done this now for the past 3 years since we hired Gabe England as our city manager, is we do zero-based budgeting. Now, Professor Goss, I'll call him, is probably the proudest of this because he teaches political science. And this is something most people teach and never do. What zero-based budgeting means is you start every year with a $0 line item for everything, and then you build up. You justify each dollar that goes into that. Agencies don't do that. Again, it's more of an academic exercise that most agencies think about doing and never do. Most just carry over the old budget and they just go at it. And they say, okay, well, this looks pretty good and maybe we'll make some adjustments. Our staff spends 6 months actually building up each line item. And it's incredible. I mean, you talk to them and you see them in the offices doing this, and it makes a world of difference. I mean, again, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is really in the finances. The surpluses are up, expenditures are down, and then when you look at the all funds surplus, it's really impressive. So, kudos again to our staff, because at the end of the day, we give general direction, but staff is the one that implements it. And this graph sort of speaks for itself. But what this is showing is an all funds position. Now, all funds might not make sense, but a lot of government agencies talk about general funds. We, frankly, historically talked about general funds. We've balanced our general fund. You'll hear that a lot. It's sort of misleading because you can balance a general fund and just have a nightmare financial scenario in the other proprietary funds. You look at a lot of agencies, a lot of our sister cities, they may have technically balanced general funds. But if you look at their water fund, you look at their sewer fund, you look at their internal services funds, they're actually running a huge deficit. And so what you look at what Sierra Madre was doing, really right at the time that Gene Goss had come on to council, John and I had been on council for about 2 years. Although we were balancing our general fund, we were actually running in the red because of our water fund and our sewer fund was subsidizing our general fund. We were transferring money from those funds to our general fund. Now, everyone might say, wait, hold on. How dare you? Why would you do that? Everyone does it. I mean, it's something that every city does, every agency does for a lot of good reasons. You pay for staff within the general fund that is actually providing services to the water and the sewer system. So we still do it, just to a lot less extent. But this is a real honest look at what the city's financial health is. And as you can see, between from 14-15 to now, it's been a remarkable improvement. And again, I think we're really proud of just how easily we've done it, because although it's been a lot of hard work, we think it was just actually a different framework and a different way of looking at it. So I probably like to talk about the allocation from the water and sewer fund a little bit more than other council members, but this is something that I included because I am so proud of it. I do think that you see other cities, and I'm not going to name them, because they do it, and they do it to a much larger extent than us. But again, we have reduced those transfers from water and sewer to our general fund. And I think that that is something that other cities should take notice and probably do as well, because I think it's something that citizens would want to know. You also can see that, as we said before, this is something that we are doing, and at the same time, our water fund is investing a lot of the money that we're bringing in from your water rates. And I think everyone in here can agree, we spend a lot of money on water. You know, I think the one thing I hear from most of my neighbors, and by neighbors I mean most of my family members that live in Sierra Madre, is that our water rates are really expensive. And they are expensive. But I'll tell you, we get, for the return on every dollar, I think a lot more than we pay in. And I think you see a lot more trucks on the road. You see our public works folks out there and our water and sewer guys out there. They are hard at work almost every day, literally a lot of weekend work, replacing water mains that were 70 to 90 years old. And you'll see them up in the canyon, which is, we'll show you a slideshow just how interesting it is. But it is amazing just how much we have done in the last couple of years to actually shore up our system. We went from a system that was losing literally 30% of our water, that was just going into the ground. And we were paying money to pump it, the electricity, et cetera. And our pipes were so old that we couldn't retain it. We are now a city that loses less than 10% of their water. And that's actually better than average. So again, another thing to, not that State of the Cities are a time to pat yourself on the back, but we're going to do a little bit of that tonight. And again, second year that we have an all funds surplus. So one of the most exciting things to talk about in local government is pension obligations, right? Everyone loves pension obligations. No, like everyone's shaking their head. No one understands it. I mean, people generally get what it is, but it's probably the most obtuse, even for those that are financially inclined and numbers inclined. It's one of the hardest things to follow. Even for us that have been on councils for a long time and consider ourselves somewhat smart and well-versed, to follow how CalPERS runs the pension system in the state, you have to be, part of Mensa and then actually realize that even that is not sufficient. You have to study these reports for years and then maybe you'll kind of get it. But this graph tells a pretty simple story. In 2012, cities like Sierra Madre were facing a crisis. Really, no local agencies were tackling their long-term pension obligations in a real way. And what was happening was the state saw that there was going to be an avalanche and a tsunami of potentially bankrupt cities because of these pension obligations. In 2012, they actually passed a new law called PEPRA, which is the Public Employee Reform Act. And what they did was make cities like Sierra Madre actually pay and start paying into the unfunded portion of their pensions. Now, there's a funded portion and there's an unfunded portion. If you don't fund your pension obligations, you're essentially paying a credit card at interest only. Now, what most cities were doing actually was paying less than interest on that credit card. So you had a situation where there's negative amortization. And when you have negative amortization, interest is just building on top of itself, and it actually starts crippling you, right? I mean, anyone knows that from their personal finances. That was happening to Sierra Madre. So we were at a point in 15-16 where 5 months from now, in 2021, we were going to have a pension payment that was due of $1.2 million. Now, that would have been more than 11 to 12%, closer to 15% of our general fund. It would have literally crippled this city. We would have had to have paid pension obligations at the sacrifice of actual services being rendered to the city. I think it would have led to losses in public safety, potentially other services like community services and library. And so what we did was, frankly, we didn't kick the can down the road. We said, unless we start making prepayments, unless we start treating this like a mortgage, like a credit card, we are going to be in deep, deep trouble. And so what we did was, and this is kind of what the story is in 3 different bar graphs. The first bar graph is what the pension obligation would have been with no action. And as you can see, it peaks at 1.2, and then it goes for a long time, and we're paying an extreme amount of interest. That's principal and interest in there. What we did was make a $5 million prepayment. And when we made the $5 million prepayment, as you can see, it actually eliminated an incredible amount of long-term obligation. And so if you look, the $5 million in prepayment actually saved us, and I want to get this number specifically because Gabe will kill me if I get it wrong, because Gabe takes this very seriously. But the 5 million actually saved us over time. Well, it was 18, okay. Let me get this number really quickly. 5 million had saved us, and this is what happens when you don't follow along your notes and then you get to the important one. But we basically made a 5 million payment that saved us $13 million in long-term obligations. We then made another 3 million payment, which again, as you can see, these are our obligations. So the savings is really from the black bar graph to the blue. And so instead of a $30 million obligation, we went to a $13 million obligation long-term. So including the money that we paid in, the 8 million, and the savings, we ended up saving ourselves $18 million. And arithmetic has never been my strength. I'm a lawyer, and I did that because I don't like math. But that's pretty good when you save $18 million. And what we've been able to do with that money is really reinvest it into the community. It allowed us to actually go from a volunteer fire department to a full-time fire department. It allowed us to actually save our police department. As many of you know, we had a time there where it was touch and go. It allowed us to actually revitalize, I think, the library services, and it's going to set us up, I think, for a great future with the library. So this isn't just theoretical savings, this is actual money that's back in our pocket, not wasted on interest payments, and it allows us to do more of the things that you want us to do in this city. We all want to pay our pension obligations, we all want to take care of our employees, but we want to make sure that we're also providing services here in the city that everyone expects. So this slide might actually be even more impressive than anything we've seen, because no other city, frankly, is doing this. There's no other city that's doing that. The other cities just cut off this presentation. It's someone from Pasadena just came in, and so no other cities are doing this, and I'll show you. But this is our historic kind of funding ratio. So the funding ratio shows how much are we funding and how much is unfunded. So we are at this point at a 90% funded ratio. What that means is our long-term liability for our CalPERS obligations, we're funding 90%, only 10% is unfunded. Historically, as you can see, we're about 70%, and that's kind of the average, and that's what we would have been at if we didn't do anything. So we jumped 20%. And to put that into perspective, these are our sister cities, and again, we look pretty good relative to them. As you can see, those that are around us, Arcadia, Claremont, Duarte, even South Pasadena, La Cañada, they are not even close to where we are. And again, this is real because the chickens come home to roost, and at some point you have to pay those obligations. And we are really well positioned to where no matter when that happens, we're going to be okay, because we've taken those hard steps in the near term and actually avoided long-term pain. But as you can see, I think that, this is something that other cities should be doing and hopefully are going to be doing in the near future. Public safety. And again, I think this is intertwined with the story of our finances and our pension obligations and how we've managed that. But what we've done in fire is absolutely incredible. In 2016, we had 4 full-time fire employees. Many of you who are here actually were volunteer fire department employees, volunteer firefighters at one point. And you know that we historically in Sierra Madre were very proud of our volunteer fire department. And it was actually something that made us very unique. We got to a point where the fire services, frankly, had gotten so intricate that we couldn't run a volunteer department. So we had to hire 4 full-time captains. But we were still running a mixed crew with volunteers. But then we got to a point where we really couldn't staff enough of the department with volunteers. So we had a hard decision to make. We had a situation where we could have outsourced and gone to Arcadia, gone to Pasadena, or gone to the county. Councilmember Rochelle Arizmendi, hello. She's here. Welcome. We could have went to Arcadia, we could have went to Pasadena, we could have went to the county, or we could have built a full-time department. And one of the things that was a driving factor in this decision was something called unified response, or automatic aid. For years here in Sierra Madre, we were part of an automatic aid situation or unified response, which means when there's a fire in Sierra Madre, Arcadia and sometimes Pasadena and Monrovia would send their fire trucks, their rigs, and their ambulances here in our city to support us and to help us. The reality was when there were fires in Arcadia and Pasadena, we would sometimes send our rigs, but oftentimes they didn't want our rigs because we were a volunteer department. And so they didn't think that, we had apples and apples. And so for a long period of time, our actual, recipient of aid, and we weren't really giving it. So we were, as, we like to talk about, we were receiving charity. We were receiving charity in fire services from Arcadia and from Pasadena. And we didn't think that that was right going forward. We thought that we had something here that we needed to make a priority. So our priority was, we need to get Sierra Madre into automatic aid. We need a unified response. We went out to the community. We had town halls. We talked to folks. And the overwhelming response was, let's prioritize making sure we keep our own department. We don't want to go to the county. We don't want to go to Arcadia. We don't want to go to Pasadena. We actually want Sierra Madre Fire. And although it used to be volunteer and now it's almost full volunteer, let's go full time. So what we have today is 16 full-time positions budgeted within the budget for our fire department. We are a full-time fire department. They are fully unionized, and as of January 1st, we are now in a trial period for automatic aid with Arcadia and the Verdugo system. And again, that is almost unheard of. Cities are actually doing the exact opposite. Cities are going to regionalization, cities are outsourcing, cities are trying to make it to where they're actually limiting their budgets on public safety at all costs. And we are, again, I think, bucking a trend, if you will, and showing that you can do this, and you can do this while also saving money and building your surpluses. On the fire, very, very proud of what we did on fire, but on police, we should be just as proud. Again, we were at a situation a few years ago where the sheriff's department was actually doing nighttime patrol for us. We got to a point where we lost so many officers and we weren't competitive in the market, we couldn't hire full-time officers at a rate to actually replace those that were leaving. So as many of you remember, we had the sheriff's department here for a certain amount of time. And again, we went out to the community. We had a commission that was a committee of folks here in the community that helped us make a decision. But we went out to you folks and basically said, what should we do? Should we have a full-time department like we always have and that we really like and we enjoy? Or should we try to go the other route, which is outsourcing, frankly, to the sheriffs or another department? And Sierra Madre, again, came back overwhelmingly. We want our own department. We want our own guys and gals here in Sierra Madre PD, uniforms, and we like local control, and we like what we do here. So what we did was prioritize that. And again, we were able to actually invest in shoring up that department, hiring more officers, bringing on more management. And today, we have a department that I think is better positioned than it's ever been. But we were only able to do that, I think, because of what we did on the pension front and what we've done on the, the financial side to get our financial house in order. But as you know, Sierra Madre, again, is ranked amongst the top 20 safest cities in California. Our response times are incredible. 2 minutes and 34 seconds. Compare that to sheriffs, compare that to a lot of different agencies. Yeah, we're a small city, it's not big, but these response times and just how safe we all feel because of it, I think is worth every penny that we have paid into that department. And I think having that department there on a daily basis really makes all the difference in the world. So I think we have a lot to be proud of on the public safety side. The library. We've been trying to figure out for 40, maybe even 50 years, a solution to our library. A library that we all love, a library that a lot of us grew up learning how to read in, a library that is, frankly, a little outdated and too small and is not serving this city to the extent that we need a library to serve us. And so the Friends of the Library has really, ever since, again, I've been on council and Councilmember Capocha and Goss have been on council, we've been trying to figure out how we can come up with a solution to get a better library, a bigger library, something that's actually going to be 21st century. And what we have now is a really exciting movement. The Friends of the Library presented to us a few weeks ago a plan to actually build a new library. And what we're going to have is a proposal on Tuesday, the next council meeting, with the Sierra Madre Friends of the Library and a new foundation, the Library Foundation. And they're going to bring forward a plan to put forward a citizens initiative parcel tax on the next election, the general election in November 2020, to basically spread a pretty manageable amount of money to each household. We're talking about $20 for a parcel tax, probably in the range of that, to build a library that'll probably be in the range of $15 to $15.5 million. And I'll tell you, we've seen the renderings. They're pretty incredible. It's a library that would make you really excited to go to. It's a library that would make you very proud. And I think that the Friends of the Library and the foundation, along with a lot of citizens here in this room and throughout the city, are going to get it done. And I have a lot of confidence in that. But I think it's exciting that we, as a council, can finally see 40 or 50 years of work, I think, come to fruition. So I think everyone's really excited about the library, and if you want to see it, come on Tuesday to the city council meeting. We usually get about 5 people there. So if you come, we'll make sure you can see we just reupholstered the chairs and everything, so it's actually really pretty. Our schools, this wasn't an accident to have the state of the city here in the middle school. As you can see, this facility is phenomenal. We as a city council fought for years to make sure that this got built. We all paid into the system to make sure it got built. And once it got built, we were so proud. And the students here and the parents of the students here absolutely love it. The staff loves it. And there were discussions at a certain point a few months ago about potentially closing the middle school. And I think Mayor Pro Tem said it right. This is really, Sierra Madre schools, especially this school, this is the gem of the district. I think it is a no doubt, no brainer proposition to say that people are now coming to Sierra Madre because of the schools, whereas in the past they were coming to Sierra Madre in spite of the schools. And so we, as a city, wanted to show our support by having this address here, because we are going to be lockstep with the district and with the leaders at the school board and with management and with the principals and with the students and the parents here, in making sure, really, that Sierra Madre Middle School is never closed, that we go in the different direction, that we keep schools open, that we stay strategic about it, but really thinking about this place as really one of the gems of our city that, even though we might not have direct authority over, we're going to do everything we can to protect. So the fact that we're sitting here for our State of the City, I think is a great way for you all to see it that might not have seen it. Take a look around, take a look at the facilities. They're phenomenal. They really are. And I think that we as a community need to make sure that we are vigilant about supporting our schools, not only this school, but Sierra Madre Elementary and the other schools in Pasadena Unified. And I want to thank Larry Torres, the president, for being such a strong supporter of our schools throughout these years. So Larry, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And now I'm going to hand it over to the Mayor Pro Tem, who's going to talk a lot about water and infrastructure and about the Clean Power Alliance.
Okay, while I get my notes in order here, this is one of our reservoirs here in Sierra Madre, and I don't know which one that is. I think it's the one on Grove Street. It is? Okay, well, that's very interesting. Our water history goes back a really long ways. Just in preparing for the talk here, I just dug out some notes I made years ago when I first got on the council about water. Just a question, how many people know that we have 2 horizontal tunnels? Okay. The first tunnel, we have 2, they're horizontal tunnels. They're just shafts that go into the side of the mountain right on both sides of Sierra Madre Dam. And the history book says that they were dug by Chinese laborers many years ago. The first tunnel was dug in 1876. The second tunnel was dug in 1882. We didn't even get incorporated until 1907. But these are just little fun facts here because water is a big part of Sierra Madre's history. So let's see. In 1911, 4 years after Sierra Madre was incorporated, legal proceedings start to condemn Baldwin's interest in water from Little Santa Anita Canyon. So that was the start of water wars. And then in 1913, 2 years later, we got a favorable judgment awarding Baldwin's, as Lucky Baldwin's, rights to Sierra Madre for $50,000. So we purchased those rights and were awarded by the court that the water out of Santa Anita Canyon now belongs to us. And just another little interesting thing, why is Sierra Madre just this little 3.2 square mile little postage stamp city here? The answer is because Arcadia was really mad about the judgment and they annexed all the property around us. Sierra Madre at the time, and I read this stuff in Michelle Zach's A Better Life in Sierra Madre, and for those of you that live in Sierra Madre, you all should own that book, and you can get it. It's a beautiful book for only $25. You can buy it at Arnold's, or anybody on the Historical Society will sell it to you, but there's a lot of great stuff in there. So anyway, I mean, at that time, Sierra Madre aspired to be a large city like Arcadia or the others around us. And it's just funny, it's ironic in a way that how they punished us, they actually helped us, because now Sierra Madre is, again, this crown jewel in the San Gabriel Valley. And, you know, those of us that live here, don't want to be another Alhambra or Arcadia or San Gabriel. We really like Sierra Madre the way it is. But anyway, in 1913, the overdraft of the Raymond Basin begins. In other words, everybody had their straw in the bowl and they're just sucking water out as fast as they can. So by 1914, a year later, Pasadena started spreading the water that came out of the mountains to replenish the aquifer. So the problems we're having, I'm just saying this because they go back a long ways. In 1928, the Metropolitan Water District was established by 13 cities, and I'm going to fast forward now to, let's see here, to 1959. So that district was formed in 1928. In 1959, the San Gabriel Municipal Water District and the Upper San Gabriel Municipal Water District was formed. So we're part of the San Gabriel Water District, and we call it the Four Cities Water District because there's only 4 cities. It's us, Azusa, Alhambra, and who else, Chris? Monterey Park. And I just want to say this, a little bit of a history lesson, and just please, I know you're indulging me. This has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about, but it does in a way. But Sierra Madre was the leader. Our city manager at the time, I forget his first name, Bevington, who was the father of Barbie Bevington, who's on our Rose Float Association. He led the effort to form this district, and the reason to form that district was to keep the larger district from annexing us into the big district. Then we were going to have to pay for the Metropolitan Water District rates. So he kept us out of that. And actually, now that I think about it, it was just really a brilliant move because we don't have to pay as much for the MWD, and your yearly assessment is not nearly as much to pay for that. So I'm going to jump ahead now to 1971. Our water district passed a $17.5 million bond measure, which you're all paying for on your property tax, to construct a pipeline for the San Gabriel Municipal Water District. So they built a pipeline that starts over by Cajon Pass below that and tunnels through the mountains and outflows in the San Gabriel River, and the water trickles down and they percolate it into our spreading grounds here. So you've been paying for this, and we haven't really been getting any of that water for years until recently. So now I'm going to jump ahead from 1971 to 1990. The Raymond Basin Water Master Annual Report acknowledges that Sierra Madre has difficulties meeting needs while complying with the judgment, the adjudication of the basin. Same year, Mayor George Maurer formally request that the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District assist Sierra Madre in securing a supplemental water supply, claiming that we've received very little over all these years. And I think our former director, Bruce Inman, used to say all we've gotten from them is trinkets and trash. I may not have that exactly right, but it's something like that. So just a little bit of history there, because one of the main things I'm going to mention here is that we now have agreement by the San Gabriel Municipal Water District to fund a joint well for us so that we have our straw in the basin and we get water from it. I mean, for those of us that have just been, studying the history of the water, I mean, that is huge. Okay, so let me find my notes here, and we'll continue on. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so how does this work? You just click? Oh, this one. Okay. Okay, so first of all, water availability. Many of you, if you've heard about the tunnels, you've heard about the 500-foot rule. The Raymond Basin was the very first basin that was adjudicated where all the parties came together as part of a lawsuit, and the judge said how much water you get to use. So at that time, he drew a line and said anytime the water level is above 500 feet above the mean sea level in our basin, then we can draw 1764 acre feet out of it. If it drops below 500, we only get 940 acre feet. Well, it's been below 940, and we haven't been following that edict that you can only draw that much. We've been drawing the 1740 all these years, even though we've been below the level, as is Arcadia. And this was an agreement between Sierra Madre and Arcadia, which led to the 1990 report to say basically that this is not sustainable. So we've been working with Arcadia and the Raymond Basin Management Board to start managing this. We've got a committee called the SMART Committee where we're working with them, and that's really been successful so far, although we haven't gotten to an agreement yet about how much we should be able to take out of there. But we've been importing water from our district connection that is through the Metropolitan Water District, and that sounds kind of contradictory because we're not a member of the MWD, and I'm not going to go into all that, but we've got this wheeling agreement basically that allows us to take imported water to meet our remaining demand, because we actually consume about 2,400 acre feet per year, and we could now only take 940 from our basin. So I'll go to the next slide. So this is just a graphic from 1991. See the 500-foot line at the top? Well, we've almost touched it in 1992. In a couple of years, we did touch the line, and we've since fell below it. But you can think about this. It's impossible to comply with that, where if we get above the line, we can pump 1740, because as soon as you get above that line, you start sucking the water out, and you're going to be right back below the line. So basically, we've come to the realization that this is just unsustainable, and forevermore now we are going to be importing water because it just isn't sustainable. And it's not that we're using more water. We're using 2,400 acre feet per year. In the past, we've used over 3,000, I think, in a couple of years, but just in my notes I've got for a couple of years, 2,700 was the number that we were drawing average, but now it's more like 2,400. So anyway, I think that tells the story, and you can see in just the past couple of years, here we are out in 2018, 2019. Remember, we've had a couple of wet years here, but the basin didn't recover, even though we're pumping only 940 acre feet out of it. So after all these years of drought, I mean, the ground is so dry that even though it rains in the mountains and is soaking in, it's just not yet coming into the basin. So our water demand, I said 2,400, but it's really 2,300. And here's just a list of our sources. We get 940 acre feet per year annually from that water district and the Metropolitan Water District Agreement. We are allowed up to 2,500 acre feet. That's basically our rights to water from our water district that the Met is wheeling for us. And we've recently signed a wheeling agreement, or an agreement with Arcadia to use their facilities to move water from the main San Gabriel Basin that is supplied by the State Water Project to our district. And that agreement is as necessary and as much as we request, according to their capability to provide it. So we haven't really been taking water through that agreement yet, but it's there if we need it. Then in 2020, we have a planned joint well that'll give us 1,000 to 1,300 acre feet annually. So when you add all that up, you can see now that we really are secure now in our water rights, in our water supply. We need 2,300 acre feet a year, and look at the bottom three alone, 2,500 plus 1,000 is 3,500, more through Arcadia if we need it, and we've always got the 940 acre feet available to us. So we're really in good shape going forward is the message here. Okay, infrastructure. In 2016, 64% of our water mains required replacement. 28% were failing, where water was just coming out like a sieve. And again, where does the water go? It goes right back into the aquifer. But remember, Arcadia gets 2 times what we get, so anything in that aquifer, they have rights to 2 times as much of us. So all that water that's going out of our wells is going back into the aquifer, and then Arcadia owns 2/3 of that. And then we paid to pump it out. We burned a lot of electricity to pump it out and just to put it back in and pump it out again. Most of our pipes are 70 years beyond their useful life. And those of you who work in facility management or engineers are probably horrified to even see a figure like that. But as I've said since I've been on the council, as we've gone through the painful exercise of raising our water rates, and politicians are the problem. We listen to people say, I don't want to spend more money. Water rates are too high. But we've never understood well enough or been able to articulate well enough that really, you people own this, and if your pipes were leaking that much, you would pay to fix them. So, your elected officials are a little lax in that regard, but I think we understand now. And even when we went through the last round of water rates, I think Council Member Goss was the first one to say when it was presented to us, it's like, wait a minute, this isn't enough to really fund the infrastructure replacement going forward, is it? So the council got the message, it's like, it's you pay for everything in this town. There's no free lunch here. So the council stepped up and added another infrastructure charge in the bill. And yeah, water rates are high, but this is what it's going to take to fix it. As I've always said, if we went back 50 years and charged a nickel per unit more, we wouldn't have been in this situation where we weren't replacing the pipes that were, basically deteriorated and beyond their useful life. So we're starting to get caught up. In 2006, we were losing, as our city manager said, 29% of our water. That's a lot that's just going back into the aquifer. We were spending less than $300,000 a year. That's not going to get the job done to rebuild the infrastructure. So now here's where we're at today. We've implemented a very robust water main replacement program, invested $5.3 million over 2 fiscal years, and just in the last year alone, $2.3 million. And again, I want to contrast that to the $300,000 here. So, the other big thing we've done is converted 100% of our users to AMI now. So there was another thing, I don't want to go back too much into that, but when we started importing the water from the MWD directly into our water system. You all remember the brown and red water that we were getting. It was eating away at our pipes. It was eating away at your pipes. I had to replace a pipe under my house as well. And the trouble is your water was leaking and you didn't know it. If your leak started the day you got your water bill, it'd be 2 more months before you even knew you had a bill. Then you'd have a couple $1,000 water bill. So the AMI will allow you to get a real-time update. And it works really well. We went on vacation and we had our neighbor, young girl, our neighbor, watering my tomato plants, and she left the hose spigot on. And I immediately got an email, and it was, that I've got a water leak. And I remember I see my next door neighbor, Sherry, back there. I called Sherry and I says, hey, go shut my water off, because I've got a leak. Then I thought about it and I thought, I'll bet the water was left on. So I asked her to go back and just check the spigots. And sure enough, it was. But we were on vacation, so we caught it the first day. You go away for a month and have something like that happen, and you'd rack up a big water bill. So that's a huge benefit to our users that we did that. So now we're at a point where our water loss is projected at less than 10% for 2020, and that is considered normal amongst water agencies. I mean, great if we can get it below that. And, as we go through the replacement of some of these old pipes, there might be some other failings and it could trickle up again. But basically, we're on track to meet what's industry standard. So I'm very proud of that. And I do just want to give a shout out to our water crew out there that you've all seen them digging up the streets in front of your house. But our water department, these are the hardest, most working, most dedicated people that I've seen. They're just great guys, and they really don't complain. And I just remember Stephen McGee, one of the guys, just telling me, we don't mind doing this. We know it's got to be done, but he asked us as council people to please figure out how to fund this, because he wants to get back to actually doing customer service instead of just digging up leaks in the street all the time, So our water performance, and this is another thing. The first bullet, refinance the debt. We tried to do this for years. We knew that our debt payments were pretty high just from our bond payments. And I just, big shout out to our city manager for finally getting this done. He took a different approach to it and really just got a loan instead of a bond. And it saved us almost $200,000 a year just by refinancing the debt. So everybody please give him a hand for that. So now we actually have budget surpluses here, which again helps us to fund the infrastructure replacement. And even when we get done with the water mains, we have a lot of work to do, but the water mains are the highest priority. This other one, simplified water rates from 4 tiers to 2 tiers. I mean, my God, we've just been through this so many times, but this is the inexperience on the council and maybe getting some bad advice from others, but we had 4 tiers of water rates, and we were getting so many complaints. It was just obvious after a while that we really got this wrong. Then worse yet, as part of that, these excess water charges, the penalties from when you moved out of your allocation and moved into the next tier, then you had to pay a penalty. Then little by little, we were just getting dependent on the penalties, and that's not what the penalties was for. So we've simplified this from 4 tiers to 2 tiers, and it's very simple. The lower tier, if you take our cheap water that we buy and you spread it across every user, that's what you pay in tier 1. Now, if you go above that, you're forcing us to buy more expensive water, so that's what you pay for tier 2. So if you stay between your tier 1, it really is related to cost, and it's very simple. I really don't get any complaints about this anymore, so it's working out really well. So we've improved our bond rating to an A, which our city manager says is really nothing to be that proud of, but it's way better than a triple B. So someday maybe we're going to get it up to, a triple A But, we were a triple B and a negative watch, So again, this is just more about getting our financial act together. So this is just a graphic of our water infrastructure investment. And you can see where we were down to $300,000 fiscal year 15-16 to $2.4 million now. So, if we keep this up for a few more years, we'll be almost caught up. Okay, just another graphic about the water loss from 29% in 2015 down to 2019. It's looking pretty good. So now in the sewer fund, we're now projecting an increase. And one of the reasons for this increase is because we had over 300 users, residents in town with a connection to the sewer that weren't paying for it. So if you're one of those, I'm sorry, we didn't go back and charge you for all the years that you got free sewer service, but now that was like 12% of our revenue. So just adding 12% to the revenue we're getting, now we're in a position where we've got a surplus. So again, just credit our city manager for digging into that. I mean, I had no idea that this was going on. And see, sometimes the council's a little blind at these things. How would we know? Okay, a little bit about our Clean Power Alliance. Now, this is another one. This is a tough one. We voted to break away from Edison as our energy provider. The Clean Power Alliance is an organization that contracts for clean energy and puts it onto the grid, and Edison delivers it, basically the last mile to your house. But the California grid is operated by the ISO, Independent System Operator, and it's a very complex system for just managing the infrastructure. So it's not owned by the investor-owned utilities like PG&E or Edison. So we made a decision, and I would just want to say I was at first very, very skeptical of this, that a new startup organization could contract for energy cheaper than the investor-owned utility, but it's true. We are. So we voted as a city to join the alliance, which is led by LA County, and I believe there's 30 or 40 cities. Is Jennifer's here? Okay. Jennifer Ward is one of the directors for public affairs on the Clean Power Alliance, so I'm glad you came, because afterwards, while we're having coffee, if you want to ask her any questions, she knows a lot more than I do. 31 cities. 31 cities? Robert Parker. Oh, yeah. Hi, Robert. Robert's another one that participates in this and helps us with one of the committees there. But so basically, with the Clean Power Alliance, you also have the same choices with Edison, but Edison costs more. So we have lean power, which is about 36% solar power. Our city default selection was clean power, which is 50% clean power, not just solar, but hydroelectric and others. Or you also have an option to go to 100% green power. Now, I'm not following my notes, I'm just winging it here. It's just a lot easier. But I think about 90, so when we joined this, we defaulted everybody into clean power. So you're actually getting a slight reduction in your electricity rates, and instead of Edison's default of about 35% clean power, you're getting 50%. So what we're doing is little by little forcing California to use more renewable resources instead of burning natural gas and other fossil fuels. So that's really the whole point of this. California has goals to get to, a number over time, and because of the Clean Power Alliance and others like it, we are now moving a lot faster. So, if you believe that reducing greenhouse gas emissions is good for us and our future generations, then I would suggest you pay close attention to this, and even considering going to the Clean Power Alliance website and changing your option to 100% green power. It'll cost you on the average, about $10 more a month. But so I did it right away, And I do it mainly as an offset to some of my other bad habits where I, use more, have a carbon footprint that's greater than what I'm proud of. So this is a really easy thing to do on behalf of the planet. So I just want to say this, though, that South Pasadena chose to go to 100% green power. So that was their default. All their residents are paying about $10 a month more than they did with Edison, and very few people have opted out of that. So I just think the problem is that people are not paying attention to this, and I'm going to, in the very near future, we're going to ask Jennifer or Ted Bardacki, who's the executive officer of the Clean Power Alliance, to come and talk about this a little bit, and we're thinking about things we can do to publicize this, to get you to think about this a little bit more. So anyway, this is just a call to all of you to think about this, and if you're so inclined to help the planet with greenhouse gas reductions, I'm just asking you to go in and convert your power to 100%. And just being on the Energy Procurement Committee, we're getting bids now from providers, and my God, solar power is becoming very cheap. It's easily available. All we need to do is provide the demand for it, and it's there to serve us. And even battery is coming online, so we don't have to burn natural gas at night. So, so 95% of residents kept the Clean Power Alliance as their electricity supplier. Some just opted back to Edison just because they didn't understand it, and that's probably our fault for not having a better rollout that made it easier to understand. So, as I said, customers are experiencing greener energy at no additional cost, and actually they save a little bit than what you would have with Southern California Edison. You can always opt out, and 100% would show your commitment to sustainability. Also, part of this, too, is trying to create local jobs, so there are some programs that are going to be rolled out that are of benefits to the community, and that are, job creating, and just other programs like smart thermostats and things like that. So we'll be working on those this year. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Mayor Harabedian, and he's going to wrap it up for us.
And I think it's apparent from what you just heard just why we're doing so well. And it's really, the man sitting behind me is a remarkable man. He's an exemplary public servant. I think if you literally molded the perfect council member for any city, you'd get John Capocha. Staff calls him the reasonable man. In the law, there's the reasonable man standard. He's the most reasonable man you'll ever talk to. He works harder than anyone. And so we got to give it up for him. And I do want, this is going to embarrass him. I want Gabe to walk up here, because this was, you got to come up here. You got to come up here. As he's coming up here, I do think that a lot of, and stand right there, we're going to, again, the spotlight's going to be on you. It wasn't by accident that in all those graphs, when you saw things turn around, financially, from a water department perspective, CalPERS, it coordinated and corresponded to when we hired Gabe England. We hired him, and so I don't think that this is any accident, because when we interviewed Gabe, we were blown away. And it's not often that someone that you interview actually over-delivers. Everyone interviews well. Everyone says they're going to do everything. Gabe has done more in the 3 years that he's been here than we did in 8 years, for sure, but more than we could have imagined. And I think he's really earned the trust of this city in such a short amount of time, but really made us look good. So, I think that, a lot of this really goes back to Gabe, his ingenuity, innovative thinking, and just kind of outsmarting the rest of us. So Gabe, thank you so much, really. we're all going to be working for him. I'm telling you. I keep saying this to everyone. We're going to be working for him at some point. I don't know how. I mean, we all are kind of here, but I think the only thing to leave you guys with is this is sort of a call to action. And it's a call to action because I think we are at a state as a city where we need continued leadership to make sure that what we've done over these past 3 or 4 years is not for naught. And what I mean is there's a couple of us that probably are no longer going to be on the city council. There's a lot of brain power and really great people that do great things in their lives. And I think most of those great people who do these great things wouldn't think about running for city council. They wouldn't think about it because, you know what, it's a lot of work. And it takes a lot of time and you're away from your family. And we're going to have 2 great council members no matter what here for at least another couple years. But you all got to start thinking about who's going to start leading this city along with those 2 members when we step off. Because I think that in a very short amount of time, you can do a lot of good. But in a very short amount of time, you can do a lot of bad. And we've seen that from a lot of different agencies. And so for you that are sitting here today or watching, really think about how can we best preserve Sierra Madre. Make sure it's the gem of the San Gabriel Valley. Make sure it continues to be, I think, head and shoulders above our neighbors. And I think the most direct way is run for council. Get your friend who you think is going to be a good council member to run. Because I think that is a really sustainable way of making sure that we continue this success. I also just want to say on a small level, you know, we didn't highlight it here, but Sierra Madre continues to, I think, impress on a number of levels. And I think when John and I were talking about what do we call this presentation, the golden age kept coming up. Look at our youth sports. Look how great we're doing there. If you come to City Hall, we've remodeled City Hall. The city council chambers actually look like a usable chambers now. You guys should come and look at it. We're doing all the small things right. We're doing the big things right. But even just seeing our Rose Float in the Rose Parade every year. This is a city. This is a city that we're really proud of. And in many ways, once you get up on a city council or you start getting on commissions, it becomes sort of tribal. You become very much, you know, of the know about what other cities and what other agencies are doing. And I do think that we here in Sierra Madre have the best of the best. And I think that we will continue having the best of the best. And this golden age, which, again, we've come to in a short amount of time, only 113 years, I think it's going to continue for a long time. But it's only going to continue if we get really smart people like you stepping up here, and you're going to be giving the state of the city in 4 or 6 years. So thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you to everyone. I'm going to, absolutely, we'll give a round of applause in a little bit. I do want to give a shout out to Corfu. There's going to be food and refreshments. So Corfu, Poppy Cake, Syndicate Coffee Baker, and The Only Place in Town. Thank you guys so much for the food and the refreshments. I also want to thank Mr. Chad Prado, who is helped so much with this. And now I'm going to introduce a band. It's the Sierra Madre Middle School rock band, and they're called Fall Risk. And they're going to end this for us. It's Fall Risk, right, guys? Yeah. That's a hospital term. I don't know where the name came up with. But why don't you guys come up, send us off, and thank you guys very much.